Welcome to It's a Piece of Cake. In this tutorial I'm going to show how to use clay on silicone molds. So I've purchased my clay from my art and craft shop and it comes into a little bag like this, and I'm just going to take some out and I'm going to knead it. So you pretty much exactly as you would with fondant. So knead it so we've got it nice and soft, and then I'm going to get a small piece, roll it into a ball so it's really smooth, and then I'm going to press it into my rose silicone mold. Press it in really firm, and if you have a bit of a bulging excess of clay that's in the center, you can use a knife or some scissors to cut it off, but I'm just going to pinch it out and then smooth it so the clay's really even and smooth, and then just release it from the mold, and then you've got this beautiful rose. And if you let it set overnight to dry, so just leave it completely to dry, it turns to a solid white and it goes extremely hard and firm, so you can use it. With this one I've added some extra clay on the back of it so I can have it kind of sitting on an angle, or I can press it into something. And then I've got this other clay as well with the rose mold, so really easy to use it on molds. Show it again in another flower mold, so I've rolled it into a soft smooth ball and then pressed it into the mold. Now you don't want your clay to go overlapping onto your mold, so you want to be inside the cavity. And that's only because if you release it later you'll have to cut off the excess. If you do it nice and neat from the start, then you won't have any excess that you'll have to cut off. So as you can see, it's really neat, even. It's gone right inside the cavity, and then I'm going to just release it from the mold and it pops right out, and then you've got this beautiful flower. So the ones I'll show you earlier, once they've set, they're at the moment it's kind of like a brownie colour. It sets to this beautiful white, which then you can paint or spray paint, whatever you want to do with it. And that's these really beautiful flowers. So you could do it with any mold that you've got. Here is a kind of necklace mold I've got. Done it with that, let it set. And feathers as well. With the feathers, I'm going to do the exact same thing, and then I'm going to leave it on an angle to dry, so it looks like the feathers kind of falling down. So I do this all the time with my daughter during school holidays because I've got so many molds, and if you're a cake decorator you've got the molds, so I thought I'll just show this tutorial for if anyone else is interested in making clays. They do make great cake toppers as well if the person wants to keep it permanently. So that's where I initially had the first time I'd done it. So here's the feather, and I'm going to leave it on an angle to fully dry it so it kind of holds its shape like that. And then I'm going to do this big flower mold. So if you are working on large molds, it won't be possible to do it all at one time. So kind of do the center so it's got a strong structure in the middle, and then fill in the gaps. So once you've got the center done, whatever pieces of clay you've got, just kind of fill in until you've got all the gaps filled in. Now I do have another tutorial on how to use fondant on silicone molds, which I'll put a link below. I'd highly recommend you watch it, even though if you're not interested in using fondant with silicone molds, because it kind of is very, very similar to clay. But you'll probably learn some other tips and tricks in that one as well, because I find that clay and fondant are really, really similar with silicone molds. So link below for that video, because it's very similar molds that I've used in that tutorial as well. I'll put that below if you want to watch that. But with this particular clay, I'm not going to let this dry overnight. So this is if you want to use the clay immediately. So with this one, what we're going to do is, once I've got it out of the silicone mold, if you have like a vase or a frame or anything that you want to use the actual pattern on immediately, you do it this way. So once I've got it all filled up with the clay and done all my corners and everything, and just got to go through it just to make sure there's no excess no excess clay, then gently kind of peel it away from the silicone mold. So nice and gently just peel it away, and then you'll get the beautiful pattern. So I've got it on a piece of baking paper at the moment, and I'm just looking at it just to make sure that I'm happy with it. And then I've got a vase here, so I'm going to first decide what kind of angle or way you're going to have it onto your vase. So I've got my vase here, and I'm going to first trial it onto my vase and see how I want it, and then when I'm happy with it, just brush on some glue on the back of it and let the glue completely set and dry. I'm also going to be painting this with a little bit of white paint, not that I recorded it, but just lightly I kind of brushed it with some white paint, even though I know it goes to a white clay anyway, but I've just painted it and now I'm going to let it dry completely. And if you have any excess clay, just use, you've got so many if you've got many of the fondant tools, just use one of them with a sharp edge just to kind of neaten up any of the excess clay. And you can do it with coloured clays as well. So if you're doing it like for a birthday and you want the person to keep the cake topper, for example, like this cute little elephant, you could do it and let it dry completely, put a message on the back of it or the person's name, and then let that dry overnight. It's the exact same thing. Just make sure with the clay that you're buying a good quality clay, because some of the clays, they will say on the packet that you, like the one that I got said air dry within 24 hours, and that's what it was. Within 24 hours it dried completely and became solid hard. So here's just a cute little elephant, and this is a blue one. Flip it out. If you have any lumps and bumps, just use your fingers or with a bit of water just to smooth it out. And again, let that dry. And here I've got it with the pink feathers. So I'm using I'm using a range of different molds because I'm using them for a few different projects. One's going to be for a custom frame for my daughter, so I'm using the feathers and the pink colours. So you could just obviously do whatever you want, or you can spray paint and colour them later as well. So here I've got some love heart molds. As you can see, very, very, very easy to use with the clay. Really, really easy to use it. So again, I'm doing another love heart mold here, just a few pieces of them. Now I've purchased this terracotta clay as well. If you find that your clay is sticking, then what I do is I spray the mold with a little bit of non-stick cooking spray and spray my hands with a little bit of non-stick cooking spray, and that kind of really makes it very, very easy to use without getting that lumpy kind of dry clay, and it kind of smooths it out a lot nicer as well. And when it dries out, that oil, you won't see anything. It dries out to a typical solid clay like the rest of them did. So if you do have that problem where they're kind of sticky and they're not pulling away neatly from the silicone mold, then just spray them with the non-stick cooking spray, because all the ones with the terracotta, I've sprayed it with the non-stick cooking spray. So I had a few of them were kind of sticking onto it, so then when I did them with the non-stick cooking spray, they came out really beautifully. So these patterns here, I'm going to let them dry out completely, and with just the one mold you get like lots of beauty. This is really beautiful if you're having a vase or some pottery for outside, then these ones work really, really nice. And I'm using the same mold as I used earlier, but with again the terracotta colour, and this time I've sprayed it with non-stick cooking spray, and as you can see it kind of slides in a lot easier on the mold. Not that the white one didn't release or anything, but it's just if you do have trouble, then I'd recommend to use the non-stick cooking spray. So I'm going to do the exact same thing as I did earlier, and I'll let this dry, and then you get this really beautiful colour. The colour of this one just looks a lot nicer than the white. I normally do the white on a lot of the molds that my daughter will be painting. So lots of those roses and flowers, she'll be painting those ones, but these ones here I'm keeping for something else. So when I take it out, as you can see, it's really beautiful. It's got that nice, beautiful colour. And if you have, most of the time it's not going to come out really perfectly smooth. You will get some cracks, you'll get some little kind of marks on them. First use your fingers to smooth them out. So all the big kind of cracks, just use your fingers to smooth them out. And you have to smooth them out, because if you don't smooth them out, it will dry and it will hold that crack. You will see it once it's dried. And then I like to use a soft makeup brush, and this just really, really makes a big difference. You could use like an eyeshadow brush, anything that's really soft and spongy. Damp it in a bit of water, and then just kind of brush it along anywhere that's got any marks or lines or cuts or any imperfection on it. And this is a really easy way to smooth it out, because the water kind of dissolves into the clay and it smooths it out very, very nicely. So I like to do that if I'm using it for particular projects. Like I said, for kids stuff, you don't have to really worry about that. But if you're planning to keep it, then yeah, definitely go through it with a soft sponge and water. This is a dog mold that I've got. Normally I just do my dog molds with just white clay, and then my children would just paint them with black, or you can spray paint them with a bit of black and grey, paint them however you want to. There's just so many options. But I've never done one with clay, so I thought I'd give it a try. So if you're doing the deep, really kind of hollow molds, you kind of first do an outside layer. So I like to go first on the outside and do a layer just to make sure all the corners and the gaps and the angles are done, rather than getting a solid big chunk and pushing it in, because you're going to miss some spots. So do the outside first, and then kind of work your way up by but just kind of building it slowly. So just chunks and pieces at a time. And then your mold, if it's not a sturdy mold, like if it's a very flexible, soft mold like this one is, it's going to lose its shapes. It's going to go really wide and fat because of the pressure of you putting all that clay in there. So what you have to do is kind of just tap it in and bring the sides in and just kind of hold its shape back a bit again, and that way it won't be such a big fat mold. So build it all the way to the top, and then once you kind of, it's very easy to come out of the mold, kind of turn it around, and then I had the camera on record, but for some reason it didn't record it. Probably battery died, and when you flip it around, then your dog would just come right out. And it's a really beautiful clay dog. I'm going to use this as a door stopper because once it's dry, it's quite heavy and hard, and that one actually took 2 nights to dry. So all these other pieces is just overnight, but if you're doing that big solid heavy ones, they take a while to dry. So give it about 2 days to dry, and you can tell because the color, it goes from a really bright to completely dull, and that's when you know that it's dried out. This one here is just some little kind of really beautiful antique kind of earring pieces. So I've filled that mold as well just to have a look at what they look like. So this would make really nice in a frame if you're making a really pretty frame. And you could paint this all into a gold, or just add some gold to it, or rose gold, or it's got a really nice antique pattern to it. So these are the little earrings that I did. Really cute, very simple. And then once they have completely dried out, so you can get your frame or whatever you want to use. So as you can see, it's quite solid. I'm going to be painting that frame anyway, but it's going to go on top, so you can decide how you want it, and then you can use a hot glue gun to stick them on. So you could have it like that on an angle, or you could have it another way, whichever way you want to have it, and then it gives you like a personalized custom frame. So that's, and as you can see, when they've dried up, they're nice and sturdy and hard, so you can really play around with them and do whatever you like with them. And like I said, you'll notice when they kind of dried up, like I said, the dog took 2 days because it's quite heavy. Doesn't look it, but it is quite heavy, and because it's a solid clay, so you could tell by, and this was the vase. I'm still in the process of painting it, but I kind of did a silver tone at the moment. And like I said, with the dog, what you'll notice is in this here, you can see that there's a part of it that looks darker, and then the rest looks faded. Once it's completely all faded, that's when you know that the dog has fully set, or your clay has fully set. And then obviously you leave it at that color, or you color it. So I hope you guys did enjoy this fun, non-cake related, but still, because most of you that watching this would have the silicone molds, and I'm sure there is something you can do with clay. I thought just share this kind of tip. So thanks for watching, guys, and if you did enjoy this video, let me know by leaving a comment or giving me a thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and bye for now.